move to the filters and subfilters tab. Prompts concept you would know a little, but if not, then I'll probably start from scratch. So prompt is something that you are allowing user to put the parameters on the run before the runtime or while they're running the report, or when we are running the report. At that moment of time, you're allowing the end user, whether it could be a system or it could be a human user, that they can change some of the parameters at runtime, and based on that, the output will be decided. So either you could hardcode things in the filter or subfilters and say, okay, that this based on this, the output will be generated. But you can also enable the prompts so that at the very last time, whenever the user is running the report or in the schedules, you can have some prompt set up. So whenever there is whenever there are integrations running in, whenever the reports are running in, those prompts will help. So if there is a human, of course, if they are running it on their own, then they would of course have this option to manipulate the data at that time, and whatever the parameters that they pass, the output will be decided on that. But if a system is running on a schedule basis, then you'll have to define those parameters accordingly, because every day when or every time whenever your integration or reports are running in, so that those parameters can be passed automatically, because there will be no human to interrupt at that moment of time. So when you are running it yourself as a human, then you will have the flexibility to add those prompts. So prompts is something that uh, you are enabling the user to change the information at a very last time, and based on that, the output will be decided. So there are various ways based on which a report can support the prompts. So one of the ways is from the data source itself, which is the first option from your reporting, where your prompts can be there. They are in not your control, because there are prompts from the data source itself. So if the data source is having any prompts, you will be able to see it in the description itself. So if you see, read the description and all those things, then in the later down the rows, if you go, so somewhere you will see that if it is information, no. So if the database is having any prompts, then you will be mentioned here that the data, it contains built-in prompts. And sometimes even if not there, then they will be also able to justify it here. So if you see here, does not contain any built-in prompts. So this data source does not contain any built-in prompts. That means from the data source side, there is nothing that Workday has provided as a prompt to you based on which you can
Mhm.
filter the data. So if there is something on the data source, then
Mhm.
you will have an option to use those prompts. Then if you don't want to use them, or maybe you want to use them, you can. But if you don't want to use them and you don't want unnecessarily interrupt the user or the end user who is running this report, then we'll discuss that how can you disable those. Disabling, that means that those are the prompts which you can select that do not prompt them at the runtime. So you can just disable them so that they will not be prompted, and the user will never know that even if there is something behind the screens. So the report will keep on running as usual. But if you think that those are useful to you, or maybe you want, you can pass the values to them on the hard-coded basis, and then you can say do not prompt. So all those things we'll see. But first of all, the prompts that could come in is, first of all, they can come from your data source. If your data source is supporting any prompts at all, then they could come here. So if there was any prompts from your data source and the data source says, then how do you populate the prompts in here? On the prompts tab is, this is a button. It will not keep checked. You will just keep it and it will automatically become unchecked. So if there is any prompt behind, those will be populated here. So right now we have not defined any custom prompts, and data source is saying that there is no built-in prompt. So for now, we don't have any prompts. So we'll discuss what is are the other ways where the prompts could be generated. We'll also generate the prompts when we will use uh, index data source. So let me just, since we have the flexibility to change the data source, so let me just change the data source, and you will see that prompts. So if you see here indexed all workers, and if I just go to the descriptions, I'm not sure why it is coming like this. This is do not use. Probably I see this to HCM workers, because that I'm hoping it has prompts. Workers for HCM reporting, and This data source is also indexed. So accessor worker is its primary business object. 1 row per worker includes all active and terminated workers. For active workers, all related objects are as of the current date. For terminated workers, all objects are as of their last date. For trending workers, okay. So there is no information written as such that this has prompts or not, but we will see if we have any prompts that could come in. So I have changed the data source. And if I go to prompts here, so if I check this, so data source did not provided me any information if they have the prompt or not. But I just checked here by clicking it, because if there are prompts and you have not checked this box, then Workday will automatically error you out by saying that there are some undefined prompts, please define them. So either could be coming from your data source or it could be coming from your filter or sub-filter. Workday will prompt you to add them. Otherwise, it will keep throwing the error. So I have just populated the prompts and it seems that this data source was having some prompts. So these 3 prompts were populated. And what are these 3? One of this is contingent worker type. So if you want to define the contingent worker type, or if you want a report to be running for particular contingent worker types, you can do that. If you want to define the employee types, regular, full-time, fixed time, then you can do. And this is for worker types, that is regular, employee or contingent worker. So these are some prompts. So if you want your user to define these things while they're running the report, let's say they only want to run the report for the employees. So in the worker types, at the end time when they're running the report, they will be prompted with this prompt. And if they select employee at that moment of time, then the data will only be written for the employees. If they go for the employee type and they enter something in the employee type in the prompt, then only those employees with employee type which is chosen by the user will be shown. Similarly for the content. So whatever the parameter that they're going to pass in here, the report is only going to run, and satisfying those workers will be there as part of your output file. So these are the prompts coming in from your data source. And these are the defaults which you do on them, that what do you want to do with those prompts. So the first option would be the by default value is the no default value. That means there is no default value assigned. And if these prompts are populated when you are going to run the report, so let's go with this first. Let me click OK. If I run this report, there were 3 prompts and I'm being asked to these 3 prompts to enter the value. So I'm being asked means I'm being optionally asked. So there is no extract sign here. That means these prompts are not required. I could pass the value. I could not pass the value. If I pass the value, it will consider it. If I don't pass the value, it will not hamper my output. And my output will be running as usual, as if it is running for all workers. So since they are not required, I could skip them. But if I want to, I can enter any value. And since there is no default value populated here, that means the setting which we saw here in the prompts, no default value. That means if there is no default value for the prompt, then when you're running the report and when the report is prompting you for this, they will not be filled with any pre-populated value. So, but there are options wherein you can say that specify a default value, but still prompt me. So here, if you want to say that you want to define any contingent worker types, you can define, but the user will still be prompted. You can change. It's just that you are just defining this, let's say 90% of the time, the report runner or whosoever is consuming this report, 90% of the time they will be running this for a particular type. So that you can define so that every time at least they don't have to change. If for 10% of the time they have to change, then they can change. Let's say you are adding, first the prompts came in from your data source. Now you're adding some filter, and we learned that you can also add some prompts through the filter. So now those are the prompt. So this filter kind of, it's like a functional property wherein when you click it in the background, but they go and checks if there are any undefined prompts. So if you keep it checked, then that doesn't make sense that if you have more prompts coming in while you're editing the report or something like that, Workday does not auto populate it. So that's why they just keep this. So every time you just check it, it becomes unchecked. And meanwhile, it just checks in the background if there are any undefined prompts or not. So let's say if we just remove it. And let me just click OK. Oh, it allowed me to save. Why so? When it is going to give me this error. So it is keeping me prompting. It used to give error actually. Not sure if
Mm-hmm.
it's just for the built-in prompts or see it's not here, but it is prompting me. We'll test this with the filter as well because it gives
Okay.
the error. I think since they are default from data sources, maybe they're
Mm-hmm.
not prompting, but it used to prompt. I'll just let it prompt again. So we will define some default values. So specify default value, and let's say I have only selected the vendor and a couple of them as the contingent worker types, and I'll just click OK. So now I'm being defaulted with these two values, but I would still have an option to change them or to add them or to completely remove them
Mm-hmm.
along with the other prompts for which we have not defined any default value. So if I just click OK, I'll be only considered with the workers who are satisfying this particular condition. I just go. So this button is there to immediately send you
Yeah.
back to your launch screen. So you can, if I just remove it, then I'll be shown every other worker. So there are lots of permutation and combinations which can go for the prompts. We have covered the default. So if you want to default anything, you can do it from here. There's the third option in the default types. So no default, some default, and determine value at runtime. So what it does is you can build a rule, a calculation, something. Let's say there is a date field here in the prompts where you are being asked to compare with the date field. So what you can do is you can calculate that date field. Let's say in the date field, every time I want to pass a date which says that day plus 2 days. So let's say I have a calculation that today's date plus 2 days I need to pass in as a prompt. So you can create a calculated field wherein you can create a date with today's date and 2 days in advance plus as well. So whenever that report is running in the background, a runtime value will be calculated whenever that report is being used, and you will still be prompted, and that calculation will happen. So if I'm running it today, so today plus 2, whatever the date would be, that would be applied and shown to me at the prompt screen. So it's like I don't want to specify a default value. I don't want to say no default value. I want the system to calculate a value for me based on the calculation that I'm going to enter here. It could be a calculated field. So whatever at the moment of time when the report is running, those values will be calculated and then it would be prompted to me on the prompt screen. And then I would again still have an option to make it something else, to change it, or no default value at all. So this is the third option where you are asking the system to define a value in the prompt for you based on the calculations that you are going to enter here. Could be a calc field as well. So this is the third option that you have. And if I go back again here to these two fields, required, that means if you make it required, then these, so from the data source side, these prompts were not by default made as required. They have given you as optional fields. If you want to make them required, you can make them required. If you really want the user to only enter this value and without entering, they cannot just pass away. So you can make it required. So one, we will keep it as required. And then the second option is do not prompt at runtime. That means this is what it is controlling you, that even though you have prompts, you don't want your user to bother with because these were not added by you specifically. These were just part of the data source which were added to you without your consent. So you have no idea, you don't want to use them at all. You can mark them as do not prompt at runtime. So in that case, you will not be So first field, we have marked it as required. Second field, we have marked it as do not prompt at runtime. So let's see how it works. I'll just click OK. So for contingent worker type, I am being shown with an extract sign, and employee type has gone from here because I have marked it as do not prompt at runtime. So it is not bothering me at all. And the third field, I did not do anything. I neither made it required nor I hidden it from the do not prompt. So it is still available for me and I can choose the values. But let's say if I click OK, so I'm being asked to mandatorily enter this value since I have marked this prompt as required, and I cannot go away without entering any value in this field. So especially when you are using the data sources for indexed one, you will have some or the other prompts. So if you really don't want to use those prompts, you can do this, do not prompt at runtime. So that you can do. So this is required, not required. So I do not want to prompt them at runtime. I'll just mark it as do not prompt at runtime. So these were for your prompts. I'll just okay. So this is one way to generate the prompts. We'll learn the other ways as well. Now I'll go to the probably. Now I'll go to the filter. So you have filter as we discussed that filter is basically on your primary business objects. So all the fields which are supported by your primary business object, you can use those fields to define your filter conditions. Filter conditions, it's like whatever filter you want to put, whatever conditions you want to put here, only those conditions, if the worker is meeting those conditions, then only yeah, that worker will pass and will be eligible to be in the output. So you can also, if you have some fields which are there in your column, so you can get from there if you want to put some conditions using those fields only. So you can see these fields on the report, and all the fields which you have on the report, you can use them to define any of your filter conditions. If you have anything other which is not, because it's not always true that only the output which is part of your columns, the filtration is condition is only decided on that. It could be anything other than as well. So then you can use anything other than the reports in the fields by typing the field name here, and you can create your filter. So you can just type any values. Let's say filter, if I want to type, let's say I'm typing a filter. I want to say that any employees, maybe companies belonging to a particular company or a particular cost center, should only be part of my output. So let's say I'm putting a condition that company hierarchy. So this company hierarchy is not part of my output anywhere, but I still want to put it as a filter. So if I go here, this is on the global. I don't want this one. This is on the worker. I want this one. The company hierarchy for the worker's primary position. Company hierarchy is usually the business units kind of structure. So then I'll choose the operator. So in the filter, I have to choose the operator. So since I'm doing a comparison, so I'm defining that I'm creating a condition. So what my condition is that in mind I want to say that the people who are belonging to this particular company hierarchy should only be part of my output. So how can I do that? I want to make a list. Now it is possible that I want to include more than one company hierarchies in my equation so that people satisfying that criteria can still be part of my output. So whenever you have a multi-instance field in your field and you want to compare the values with a particular list, then the value that you are going to choose, so this will depend. So this operators kind of changes when the field type changes. So if your field type is multi-instance, the operator might be different. If your field type is a single instance, your operator might be different. If you have a date field, then of course the operators will be different. It's like apple to oranges does not happen. Whatever the comparison Workday supports for this field could be here, and you will see more than what it is needed at least. Uh, not at least which is minimum needed, but it could be more than what you need for this field. But this list will change on the type of field that you are comparing to. So I want to compare it with a list of company hierarchies for which I am allowing the workers to be part of. Other than that, I just want to exclude that population. So it is a multi-instance field. And if you want to compare it to a list, you will choose any in the selection list. Or if you want to build your condition other way around, let's say you have 20 company hierarchies, and out of those 20 company hierarchies, you want 8 company hierarchies for which the people should be there as part of the output. So rather than mentioning those 8 company hierarchies, you can make it a reversible kind of condition wherein you can say none, wherein you will only mention those 2 hierarchies which you don't want to include actually. But that will totally depend on your requirement, wherein you have been given, okay, that only these two conditions should not meet. Rest every condition, if a worker is belonging to, they should meet. So that will depend on what the requirement is. So you need to build it in a way so that it is scalable in future. So now you are being given a list of 8 company hierarchies for which the people should all be in the output. But tomorrow, let's say if a new company hierarchy is getting added, then every time what you'll have to do, either you'll have to come to this report, edit it, and then add it to your selection list, because those people will not by default will be added because you have a fixed list of those 8 company hierarchies. And if new workers are coming in a new company hierarchy, they will not be part of it. So either you can build a none so that you know that only these 2 company hierarchies will, these people I never want to include, but any people getting added to the existing company hierarchies should still be part of my output. Or if a new company is added which is not part of this selection list which I'm going to, they will still be included in the output. So I'll say any. So if I say any in the selection list, then whatever I'm going to make it as a comparison here, those lists, it will be compared, it will be seen, okay, that if the worker belongs to any of these, it will be part of they will be satisfying the output. Now in here, you are choosing the operator. In the next option, you are doing a comparison type. That how do you want to compare? So the first option by default, which is coming in, value is specified in the filter. That means whatever you are specifying in the filter here, your workers company hierarchy will be compared to that value. And you will have a allowed list of the particular work. What they will do will that company hierarchy. So now what Workday will allow you to do here, whatever the company hierarchies are specified in the tenant, you will be allowed here from those lists. So if I just go, maybe I have chosen a wrong field. I'm not sure if there is any company hierarchy even set up in here. I think we will have some things at least, but there is a lot of junk in here. So this, if there is a lot of bigger list in here, then you'll have to go by this, by selecting, going to the object, company hierarchy, and then going by the name, and then keep selecting whatever you want to select. So these will be the company hierarchies which are defined in your Workday tenant. And you will be doing a comparison like this. You can also select more than one value, go to somewhere else, find the other company hierarchy. So this way, whatever is allowed in, you want to be allowed in your list, you can do that. If you don't want to do this, selecting from filter, so this, you can also choose this condition where what it says value from another field. So what this actually means is it is like a comparison you are doing from another field. So this could be again, this could be a calculation which can exist. This could be another a sum of 2 values, or could be any calculation that you want to do. So instead of directly comparing the values, so here you will not be comparing the values, you will actually be comparing it to a condition or somewhere or a calculation. So output of that calculation will be compared to the company hierarchy. So output of that calculation, so let's say I'm building a filter on a date. So I'm comparing date to date only. So whatever I'm doing value from another field, so the data type of this field and the output of this should be same. So the output of this will be calculated dynamically at runtime, and then it will be compared with this, that the company hierarchy. So this will result the company hierarchy for the worker, and it will be compared to this. So this value should always be giving you the value which can resemble to this or does not resemble, but it should be part of the apple to apple, not apple to oranges. So this value you will can do this on a date field, I'll tell you. So this will dynamically compare it to that conditional logic and then see at what moment, instead of directly hard coding comparing, at that moment of calculation, it will be understood and checked that what is the output coming from this particular condition or field. Then it will be compared to your condition. So this is your value from another field option. Now, these two options which you see other than this is prompts and prompt. So these are the prompt options. It is nothing but instead of comparing and placing the value in the comparison, you are now leaving it up to the user, so that whenever the report is running in, the user will now be, so we'll discuss how these two are different, but basically first thing, these two are prompts only, and at both the options user will be prompted to enter the value, and whatever the entered value whatever the user value enters at that moment of time when the report is run, the company hierarchies will be compared then. And if the entered company hierarchy by the user is matching with the worker's company hierarchy, then you will have that worker in the output, otherwise not. So both of these two are prompt options. And this is our second way of when your prompts can be generated. First, we discussed from the built-in data source. Now, the second prompts that a report can have is from your filters. So the first option, prompt the user for the value. And the second option is prompt the user for the value and ignore the filter condition if the value is blank. So in the first case, prompt the user for the value, you are actually asking the user to enter the value. So if the user enter the value, it's fine. But if the user user does not enter any value, then it will be kind of considered that, okay, your user does not have entered any value. So the report will not give the accurate output, because the second option, if you see here, what it says is prompt the user for the value and ignore the filter condition if the value is blank. That means this option is more flexible in nature, wherein you are asking the user to enter the value, but in case the user does not want to enter the value, then Workday will completely ignore this entire condition. So it will understand as if there is no filter row. So Workday will completely remove or omit this condition. So if you only have only one condition in your filter, that means if a user does not enter any prompt value for comparison, your entire company hierarchy condition will be removed, and all the workers which are satisfying your data source criteria will be there as part of the output. So this gives the user with the flexibility that if they don't enter anything, it will be ignoring this completely filter condition. But both values will allow the user to get prompted and enter any value in the system. Now, this is your comparison type when you are using the prompt. And here in the comparison value, you will see the comparison as default prompt. By default, if we are doing any prompt, we'll keep it as default prompt. And when you go to the prompts tab, so you see only 3 are there from the data source side. So if you want to, so let's check one thing now, which we were testing before. Let me just click OK now. I think Workday has changed something. If I just click it here, my prompt is here. So it used to come actually. We entered the filter, and instead of comparing here itself, we have allowed it to make it from a prompts perspective. So in your example, that day you were saying that I was requested with a report wherein a manager can enter their organization name, and based on that, they can run this report. So if you want to make that report scalable and flexible enough so that every manager can query that report, and every manager can just enter their organization name And based on that, whoever is part of their organization and even subordinates, let's say a CEO wants to run for his organization. So CEO and all his subordinates should be part of the output. Then you are just sharing that report to all the managers, and then whoever runs it, and they can just enter their org's name. So now in that case, instead of entering or hard coding a particular org and then creating hundreds of report for hundreds of managers, you can create a single report by giving an organization prompt like this, and then prompting the user and probably choosing this option. If they are entering their organization, they will be given the output of their organization. If they are not prompting, then they will be given the uh, output of all the organizations that exist in Workday. So in these cases, you will allow the report to have more flexible in nature, wherein this can be accessible by all the managers. Whatever they input at the runtime, they will be given that particular output. So you have enabled your prompts here. And again, same thing. I will not repeat again and again. Default, no default, specify default, you can do. So, and again, you can control required, non-required, these things. So this is where you can define your filters like this. You can keep adding more rows, as many filters as you want. And you see if here by default it is AND. You can choose AND or. So if you want to make a mixed of conditions, I hope you are already aware about AND and
Yeah.
OR. AND and OR. So it's like 0, 1. So if you are using AND ends, then that means that both the conditions have to be true. If we're talking about a worker, then both the conditions has to be true for a worker to be satisfied. If I just make it OR and write a condition here, then if a worker is satisfying this condition, he will be part of the output. Or if he is not satisfying this condition, then whatever the condition is below in a OR condition. So either ways, whatever condition he satisfies, he should be part of the output, either this or this. If he's not satisfying this, then it will be checked, or is he satisfying this? So it's like and then you have the option of using the brackets in Workday. So let's say you have a OR condition here, and I keep a bracket here. And then if I say that cost center, so this is a single instance field you see here, single instance field. So when I'm choosing a single instance field, the options will be changed a little bit. So now you see I don't have an option called any in the selection list. Here I had this option any in the selection list because this was a multi-instance field. So if you want to compare a single instance field with the list of values, then you will choose any in the selection list. So here you have option any and not in the selection list. There for this field you had option any in the selection list or none in the selection list. But for a single instance field, we have in and not. So same way, if I want to make a comparison, both ways it means the same, but it's just that for multi-instance field, they have given some select all workers with your field names in the columns attribute that you have given, where company hierarchy equals the list of values or one value, and then if we have an or here, so we are building and where is equals to this condition. In the or we are mentioning cost center. Cost center is equals to, let's say, just choose any random value, whatever comes. I don't know what kind of data. No, let's not choose the inactive at least. I'm not sure what data this has. I'm just choosing some random values. Maybe we will not even get the output. So just for the understanding of the condition, my worker belongs to this company hierarchy, or my worker belongs to this cost center. So this is, if I don't enter a bracket here, so my worker will be checked for the company hierarchy, whatever is being prompted, or he belongs to this cost center. So either of these conditions gets true and my worker will be in the output. But let's say if I want to make it a little complex, and if I want to say this is not just a simple or, so either my worker should be part of this company hierarchy. If not, I will be checked with an or condition wherein I'm going to say that if he's part of this company hierarchy, that's fine. But if he is not part of this company hierarchy and I'm being asked to check a or condition, then it should not just be a or. I want to make it more stringent that if the worker is part of this company hierarchy, it's fine. But if they are not part of this company hierarchy, then the rule should be more stringent that along with the cost center checking, I want to check something else as well. So let's say I say company. Again, it's a single instance field in the selection, or if you want to just compare it with any other operators, if you want to say is not empty. So, and I'll put a bracket here now. So this is like a query. So here what will happen? My condition will be checked if the worker is part of this company hierarchy, or if he's not part of this company hierarchy, what it will be checked? He should be part of the cost centers along with this list, and his company should not be empty. He should be assigned to at least some company. So for and this only condition is checked. I created the bracket because I knew that this condition is in my mind. I have been given that along with the checking of the cost center, I should also have to check the company. So it's like the exceptions that we create. So we are saying that workers who are belonging to this company hierarchy, they should be part of the output. But we also want to include some more workers, maybe who do not have this company hierarchy, but since they are part of this cost center, so they're part of this cost center, and if they have a company assigned, then we still want to include them. So it's like a flexibility also you are giving with a more stringent rule, wherein you are saying one condition is fine because let's say majority of the nine. So how does condition functionally? What does condition functionally mean? What this condition functionally means is that let's say 90% of the population will be satisfying this particular condition. So 90% of the workers, they will be passed with this condition and they will be part of the output. But remaining 10% of the workers will not be belonging to this company hierarchy, but still I want them to be part of the output, but not just like that. They have to satisfy all of these conditions. It could be more ends. I can just keep on adding, and that in this case it will check the cost center, company, and maybe let's say they should be hired before this and this date, or their hire date should be greater than or less than this and this date. So I can keep more and then I'll end my bracket here instead of here. So it is like simple and is getting checked, but for an or, I'm checking more that along with this also should be checked for the worker to be eligible for my output. So this can be as complex as you want to make it. It will totally depend on what the requirement is you are being given. This is a very what I would say, this is a very frequent case that you might get to have these conditions built based on different people can get supervisory conditions, company, cost center, data, dates, hire dates, particular worker between particular hire dates and all. So could be anything to everything condition that you can build here in your filter. But all those conditions and your filter, how does your prompts get populated from your filter? That's also we have learned here. So it's in my prompt. Now I think it will get. I'm tired of this tenant. Sushma has not joined us. Okay, I will just remove it. Go to prompt. So prompt is removed. So now I'll go to the sub filter. So we understood filters is from my primary business object and I can edit here. My filter will control the count of workers in my report. So in this filter, whatever we have built for the testing, if the worker is not satisfying this filter, then they will be not part of the output. Sub filter is something which we are creating on the related business objects, which is why you see a add button. You can create as many sub filters, as many related business object you want to use for your conditional, which is where you have to specify your business object, that is your related business object, based on which you are actually applying your filters on. So let's say my filter is on the dependents info. So as previously we discussed a little bit on this, that the subfilter will be applied to your related business object, which will not hamper the worker coming from the output, but rather it will only filter the related business object or related business object data to be coming in your output or not. But even though if this dependent condition is being not satisfied, your worker will still be part of the output with maybe zero dependent rows or something like that. So your subfilter getting executed, you have the dependent business object, and here let's say uh, you want to create a condition wherein only female dependents should be part of the output. I think it was created by me only in the last session. So here we have a condition wherein we are checking that the dependent's gender should be female. So if the dependent is of gender female, then those dependents should be part of my output. So if you see here, I have a field which is created on dependent business object. I cannot call a worker business object field on my dependent business because here I have defined the business object. So I will only be allowed to create condition, and it makes sense as well because my business object here is dependents. So now I'm filtering the data on dependents. So the data, the workday delivered fields, and the further calculated fields that I'm creating will be created on my dependent business object only, because now I want to filter the data from some another table, which is actually dependent table. So all my fields should now be part of the dependent table. If I want to put a condition on the worker table, then I have the filter. So all the fields and the conditions that you are going to create, that should be created on this business object which you are using here. So see here in the calculated field, we have created the field dependent, and the gender field is for the dependent, not for the worker. So you see here, automatically when you have chosen the business object as dependent, you are getting the gender field of dependent only. Then you are comparing it with the list of values which are configured in Workday as female. And you have created, we'll discuss this in the calculated field section, but since it is already created, so I'm just showing you. So here I'm saying that my my dependent of gender of the dependent should be female. So this is already, if you see the type of field, maybe it's not visible, highly visible to you, but it is like a T and then pipe and then F. So it is a T and F field, which is called as Boolean field in Workday. So T, pipe and F. So true false field. And this is how we write the nomenclature of true false field. CF calculated field space TF, that is true false field. And it is the type of true false field. When we will discuss the calculated field, we'll discuss. So this is like a Boolean field. So this Boolean field is checking the condition that gender is equals to gender in the selection list female. So if the dependent's gender is female, it is going to return true. So it is already checking the condition here. And this, since this is a Boolean field, for whichever dependent satisfying this condition, this calculated field will return either true or false. If the dependents are satisfying this condition, the value returned by this field will be true. If they are not satisfying this condition, then the value returned will be false. So now this value I have to compare here, that the value of this field. Now, since this is a Boolean field, so Boolean field can either contain yes or no. So how do I compare with the operators in this? I can say this value is equal to, not equal to. So I want to say that the dependents, only the workers who are having female dependents and their female dependents should be shown. So I will say equal to and true. That means my this condition should be true. Only then those dependents should be part of my output. So let's say a worker has 4 dependents. So for all the 4 dependents, the value will be checked of the dependents, that what is the value. So it will return true for 2 females if they have, let's say, mother and spouse. So it will return true for 2 dependents. So out of 4 dependents, only 2 dependents are satisfying this condition. Then for them, uh, only 2 workers will be part of my only 2 dependents will be part of my output for that particular worker. But let's say if a worker has 2 dependents and both of them are male, so I will not see anything if by chance I'm uh, representing this same information in the column as well. Then I will not see any dependent information in the column, because I'm kind of filtering that only female dependent should be shown. So if there is no female dependent at all, I will not be shown anything, but my worker will still be there in the output. So one option we tried with the filter on the prompts, that was the second option. Now, same thing that you did with the filter, you can do same thing with the sub filter. So it is just the comparison type that you are doing. So instead of the comparison type, you are hard coding the value here. You can say prompt the user for the value. So if I just want to prompt the same thing, instead of a default check, now it is being prompted. And if I go and save my value again here, I'm not being given the option again, error. So it's good that Workday has now removed it. So let me just run it. So I'm being prompted here. So if I want to select this condition, then I will be, my dependents will be returned only if they are female. But if I ignore this condition, don't put it anything, then the entire condition itself will be ignored. So if I just click it through and click OK here. So in here you see, this was the field, and I think this was the dependent field for female only, if I'm not wrong. So you will see here in this dependents field as well, which was the by default multi-instance field. So I'm only being shown we can also check this gender if I go here. So gender is female. So this is a dependent ID and the gender is female. So I'm being shown the female, and these are probably the kids as well for this worker. So, and you see there is no dependent for this person, no dependent at all. But still, the worker is part of the output. So if they have any female dependents, they would be shown. If they have any male dependent, they will not be part of the output. But the worker will still be part of the output, even though they have so this condition that we have created for sub filter, it will only control the data coming from the dependent business object and not from the worker business object. And the third way we learned the prompts is from the sub filter, that they can come here. I can also populate this. So I think they have stopped giving the error, and it is not like you default put it here. So even though you save, it will allow you to save, but you will be prompted with the default conditions, whatever are here, as if you have not done anything, or as if you have leave it blank after applying it. So you will be prompted, but at least you will not be given the error now. But it does not make sense. Either you make it default here. So people will maybe will not understand that I did not configure the prompt, but still I'm being prompted for some value. But let's see. So if I go to share, by default, whosoever is creating the report will be created with this default setting. Don't share report definition. And by default, the report owner will be the one who has created this report. But if you have a report writer level access in the tenant, So you cannot directly do search the report by doing like, so to search the report, we have a abbreviation quick option. You do RD in colon and then the report name. So if you have the report access, you will see all the report which I have created and I have access to. I am being shown with this name that these are the reports I have access to in the access tab, because these were created by me, or either I have access through other means. Let's say there was a report created by you and you given me the access on the share tab. So if that level of access I have, I'll be able to search the report by default by doing RD colon your subject name of the report or whatever. But if I don't have access to that report, if I have the report writer level accesses, like kind of admin accesses, I can still reference the report, but not by doing this. I can do view custom report. My spelling is wrong. So I can do view custom report, and then I can use this task. Then I can search for that particular report which I'm searching. Let's say you created some report, or maybe let's say I have created these reports. And since you're using the same tenant, by default, if you do RD, if you're using the same user as me, then of course it is just the name of the
Yeah.
report, the user apparently is same. So if you have any other user by which you are logging into the same tenant, and since this report was created by me and not shared with you specifically, and you have the report writer level access, then what you will do this view custom report, type the custom report name. Uh, let's say, oh my God. So let's say this, some random report I'm opening, and I'm doing a view custom report access. So if I go to the share tab, so this report is shared with specific authorized groups and users, and I'm not the authorized group as manager, and this report is owned by Logan McNeil. But still, I'm able to access this report because I have the report writer level of access. So in those cases, what will happen if if you don't have the, if maybe this Carol is part of the manager group as well, which is, maybe let's do one thing. You'll get to know. Yeah, maybe she is part of that group. That's why. So what will happen if you are not part of that group and you are opening this report as an admin, or I would say maybe with the report writer level of access, wherein you can query this report by doing a view custom report. In that case, what will happen? You will probably not have option to run this report. Your run option will be disabled if by default you are not the owner of this report and somehow you have got access by doing the view custom report task. So in that case, what you can do is, and this will happen very frequently to you in your projects, that let's say that report was created by some other person, and maybe you have joined the company as a new person and you are not being added to any authorized groups, wherein those authorized groups, or maybe the report is not even shared to any authorized groups. It is shared to the individual users on the authorized users tab, and the group is empty. So since no, you are not part of this any group, and the group is also not authorized, only individual users are authorized. And since you are new to the company, so unless somebody go and add you to the authorized users list, so there will be hundreds of reports where you are not being part of, and somebody is telling you, okay, there is a query has come and you need to make changes to this report and enhancements, and then do whatever. So in that case, you are saying, okay, I'm not able to see this report. Okay, somebody will tell you, okay, go view custom report task. I have given you the report writer level access. Do the view custom report task, open this report and make changes. So first of all, you will see, okay, whether I'm able to even run that report. So what will happen? You will not be able to run this report. Your access will be disabled. So what you can do, go to the custom report, go into the edit mode. First of all, give yourself the access by in the shared users, add your name here in the authorized users list, and then save this report. First of all, now you have got the access. Go to the related action again, and now you can run the report. And then if you want, you can make changes changes you will anyways, because you have already made changes to the authorized users list. So edit access you have, but you don't have the run access. So then you give yourself the access, then you will get the run access. So you can run that report, then see what is the problem, issue and all. And then you can make changes to that report. If you want, add any new fields, remove any fields or any condition logic or filter. So this is a very, very frequent problem that you might face. So this is how you're going to resolve it. Okay. Anything else? Share option is here. So this is like sharing the report definition to the particular user. This does not mean sharing the output of the report to the user. So it might happen that the person may have access to this report, but when you are scheduling the reports and when you are sharing the output of that report, in the scheduling, you have to specifically mention the users whom which the output will be shared and they will be no. So when you schedule the custom reports and you want your data to reside only in Workday, and you don't want your data to go outside, and somebody is requesting, or usually this is part of the reporting team, but depends on the system to system, the reporting and integration team quite close together, and somebody resources, sometimes you will feel that you do have to work on the internal reports as well as on the external API reports as well. So in that case, if some user is asking that those users can log into Workday and they have they have rights to log in Workday and see the report outputs, and they're requesting some data to be report to be scheduled to them every week or the other day or whatever with the requirements there. So in this scheduling, your user will be able to see the report if they are able to log in and while scheduling specifically. So sharing here means something, you are giving the report definition access. Sharing the report schedule output does mean something else. So let's say if I click here, this is right. So sharing the output of the report is totally different. If I go to custom report and do a schedule, and I do a daily schedule, let's say, and I click OK. So on the scheduling page, all your prompts that you have in any report which are you have exposed and you have not chosen, do not prompt at runtime, all those prompts which you have enabled and you want to be prompted will be coming here, because you are not running the report now on the on ad hoc basis. You have a scheduled report, and since you will not be touching that report every day, that report will be running on its own. So what will happen to the launch parameters that are there? You will not be going manually and value entering the value every time. So in that cases, if your launch parameter is something that was being mandatorily kind of prompting you to enter those values, so you'll have to make the launch parameter something which can make you help it build a dynamic rule wherein you don't need to enter that value anytime, or maybe remove the prompt itself. So anything which is kind of, you cannot make it dynamic. So in that case, you'll have to remove your prompt. If something that, let's say there was a hire date prompt and you were generating a scheduled report, that any user who is being hired with this and this hire date, and after this particular date, whose user's hire date is after this date, should be part of my output as a prompt. So you can make a dynamic rule on that. You can create conditions that any person, let's say you're generating a future hires report. So any person's hire date coming 7 days down in the future, you want recruiters to be aware of that data, and maybe you want to share the output to them, so that you can build some kind of rule in Workday and have that dynamically created calc field called here, and instead of specify value, you can choose determine value at runtime, and you can create that condition rule here. So the condition, the hire date will be checked every time, and whatever the rule is, if the worker is satisfying that rule, so such thing which you can handle dynamically, you can have those prompts specified here. Choose this value, determine value at runtime, and then have that rule executed. But if there is something that which either needs some manual input every time, then you cannot use. Either or there are a couple of other options. let's say you don't have many such things, but let's say you have only 5 or 6 limited options in the prompts. Let's say you have 5 company hierarchies, or maybe let's say 5 important cost centers for which you are running this report. So what you can do is, for the same report, you can create 5 different schedules. So every schedule with a different prompt. So for one schedule for one cost center, another schedule for another cost center. So let's say you have 5 schedules, and probably all those 5 schedules are being delivered to the same person. Or maybe let's say there are 4 different person or 5 different person. They want the data by cost center. So that also you can do, wherein you can specify the value for that particular cost center, so that you have single report but 5 schedules delivered to different persons or the same person, so that he will have the output for already segregated with the 5 different files for 5 different cost centers. So that also you can do. So all the in the report criteria, if any prompts are there, they will be specified here, and you will have to assign them here. Then on the schedule tab, you just simply define the schedule, whether it runs on every day, weekday, what is the start time, what is the time zone, what is the start and end date, all those things you can specify on your schedule here. If you go to the output tab, here you will define the type of the output that you want to share. And here it is the file, that means your report process monitor. After how many days you want your file to be deleted. So let's say if some recruiter was on, some person with whom you want to you have shared the output, he was on leave or something, so he was not able to see the output. So these many days after the scheduled run, the file will still be available on the report event, on the process event, but after these many days the file will be deleted. So that you can decide based on your business rule how much time they want to keep the report output file. So this is for the file, until when your file will be available for download. Here you can see if, let's say, do not output any empty report. That means your report is generating daily, and let's say you're generating it for every new hires that are hired. So let's say there is a holiday season going on, and there is no new person being hired for a month, entire month. So you don't want every time to the person generating the empty reports, they are complaining that why are we getting empty reports even though there are no hires. So in that case, you can choose this checkbox wherein the schedule will not generate an empty report. So if there are no persons satisfying the criteria, then the empty report will not be generated. So they will not be bothered to notifications, and no output file will be there. This is to hide your prompt values. That means you only want to show the users the only output rows and columns. Any kind of prompts that you have used in your report, in the report criteria, they should not be part of your Excel or whatever output you have chosen. So by doing this, you can hide those prompts, not to just confuse anyone, because they will just probably show the rows and they will want to see the rows and columns, nothing else. So that thing you can control here. Now the important tab of share tab, here you will be now sharing the output. That sharing, the previous sharing was for the report definition sharing. This is sharing is for your report output sharing. That means the report output which will be generated after this, with whom all users this report output will be shared. You can mention it by the individual users. Let's say you want to show it to all HR partners, all compensation partner, all benefit partners, or whoever the group is. You can name the entire group instead of adding the single users. Totally depends what kind of a requirement you have. So here you will be sharing the report output definition to all those users. And this is the normal agreement statement that you have to make. So one thing here, when you will be, so normally when it is part of the integration team's report, or I would advise even if it is a reporting team's report, we should not keep these schedules to ourselves. I'm being there in the company for today. I'm being horizontally transferred to some other role, wherein now I am kind of working as a Workday admin. But tomorrow, if I move from my Workday team to some another team, so I will not have those privileges in the tenant as I was having before. So if I have this schedule, so we'll see how do we transfer these schedules to some. So by default, whoever person is creating this schedule, the schedule owner will be that person. But we should not keep the schedules to ourselves. So that is why we advise to create the integration system users that we will learn in the integration security class.
Okay.
So we should not keep the schedules to ourselves, because when you move, maybe you leave the organization or maybe you are
Dependencies
moved
there. Okay.
horizontally, then the report will start failing because you now don't have those privileges which you previously have, and maybe the
Mhm.
users will not be delivered with the report, or even they will not be getting the correct output in the report, because now your user access was driven previously to get all the worker data. Now you are not having those privileges, so your report might be generated empty with some fields having data, some fields not. So then what you do is you create the system users, give them the access that we will learn in the security class, and then you transfer the ownership of this schedule to that particular system user. So when you do that, when you transfer the ownership of the schedule, so right now I am the owner, but when I'm transferring the ownership of that schedule, this sharing option, what will happen? This sharing option by default gets changed to don't share. Whenever the owner of the schedule changes, so let's say you have, and this mistake you will learn by mistake, that you done the sharing output and everything, and you have created the ISU, and when then you went to the schedule, you went to the schedule and you transferred the ownership. So this is the end date until when you want to have this report. So you do here, let's see, I shared with myself and I clicked OK. So now let's say if it was not me, I have shared with some other person who I want to share this report. So I came here, I have the ISU and everything ready with me. So what I did, now I transferred the schedule to some other user, or maybe let's say ISU. So first of all, let me go to the uh, schedule feature process. So how can you go to the schedule feature processes? There are a couple of ways. You can open the report. You can use the report definition usages where this report has been used. So the report has been used in a report schedule process. You can open it from here. So now you are on the same schedule process. And let's say now I want to transfer the ownership of this schedule. So you are moving to a horizontal position wherein you will not have the Workday privileges. You are transferring it to your colleague's name or maybe a integration system user. So here you go, schedule future process, and you come here and you are doing transfer ownership. And here you are finding a new owner. So let's say, okay, I'll find some other user. I'm not sure if I'll get anyone or not. I'm not getting anyone. So let's see, you have transferred this to any other user. We'll create the ISU exactly, and then we will transfer
Mhm.
this ownership. So when you transfer this ownership, what will happen is that in your access tab, in the share access tab, whenever you are changing the owner of the schedule, this option will by default get to don't share, and you will not even notice. And you have just transferred the ownership and you're happy. Okay, I have transferred the ownership. I'm all good. But then after a week or whenever the next schedule is ready, you will see that that user has not received the report output. And you will say, okay, I did my job. I transferred the ownership to the other person. Now it should all be good. Maybe you have left the organization, but what will happen is that when you transfer the ownership of the schedule, Workday changes the option from share to don't share by default. So whenever you are
Okay.
transferring the ownership to some other person, make sure to come again on the schedule, go to the schedule again, edit the schedule, and now go to the share tab and do that sharing again to whoever it was before or want to add more.